Hi, everybody, and welcome to Monday Night Live. I'm going to start this whole thing over because my first attempt a few minutes ago was a complete and total train wreck. My apologies to the people that had tuned in, and then I lost my service. All of a sudden, for whatever reason, the internet dropped. So I thought, I'm just going to get rid of this and start all over again. So welcome to Monday Night Live. This is my weekly show where I sit down and talk with everybody about real estate concerns for buyers and sellers in the market. And I wanted to cover some things with you like I always do, and then I take questions as well. I usually wait a few minutes here to get things rolling again. And again, for those of you that did tune into the train wreck from a few minutes ago, I apologize. So let's just start fresh. There's a couple of things I wanted to cover with everybody tonight. And these are things for all of you. If you own a home and you're just, checking in with me right now and you're not really interested in buying or selling, this is good information for you to have, especially if you own a home, because there's so many things that you can do with that home, from equity position of getting another loan, doing refinancing, whatever it might be. So the first thing I'd like to cover tonight is, how do interest rates affect buying a home? Everyone knows that a lower interest rate is a good thing because you're saving more money. Obviously, the lower the interest rate, the more money that you're saving in interest payments. Seems pretty basic. But more than the cost of the house or the price of the home, the interest rates affect you long term, because as we're seeing the market value go up, even if it's 2 to 3% on average per year, you're gaining value in the home or your equity position. With an interest rate, here's the key ingredients, and I'm just using numbers. Let's say right now at 3% would be your interest rate, and you wanted to buy a $250,000 home, and your payments all in with taxes and insurance and everything was like $1,800 a month at 3%. Okay. You wait 6 months or a year to buy a house. Now you come back into the market to look for a home, but now interest rates are 4%. Okay. 1 point higher than what it was. So it went from 3 to 4. Now that same $1,800 will no longer buy you a $250,000 house. It will buy you a $225,000 house. So for the payment to stay the same at $1,800, for every interest point that the interest rate goes up from 3 to 4, 4 to 5, you lose 10% of your purchasing power. So another case in point would be, let's say the rates jump from 3% to 5%. Well, then that same $1,800 payment now only affords you a home for around $200,000 or maybe a little bit over. So that has a larger impact on you in the long run when you purchase than almost anything else, because if the prices of the homes are going up as you're looking at them, because you have so many people trying to buy at the same time with a limited amount of inventory, you allow the appraisal to kind of sort out that value, that yes, it's worth this amount of money. But the key to being a successful buyer is, the better the interest rate, the more home you're going to get for a lower payment. And so that's kind of what I want to explain to people, that that's really the details of what's going on. The other piece of it from an interest rate standpoint is, let's say you own a home and you're hearing about all these incredible interest rates because they are very low right now, and you want to refinance, and they're thinking, hey, I want to, improve my situation, pay less in interest and save some more money, which is a great thing. There's a couple rules of thumb that you need to think about. So if you're looking into a refinance, the first thing you need to know is how much obviously you still owe on the home. You also need to know what your current interest rate is. Once you know those two things, then you have to look at that and say, all right, as a general rule of thumb, we want to do a refinance if we can save at least 1% or a full point on interest. So if you're currently at, say, 4% and you can drop to 3%, that's great. That's worth doing it. And the other piece is, are we going to stay in that home for at least 5 years? The reason that this is important is that when I go to, say, I have a $200,000 mortgage and I'm at 4% right now, and I'm going to go refinance the house, to get a 3% mortgage. They're going to charge you some fees for closing, which is typically around, let's say, I don't know, $4,000 or $5,000. When you go to refinance, if you don't bring that cash to close to do your refinance, they'll roll it into your loan, which is fine. So then when you refinance from $200,000 at 4% to $200,000 at 3%, they're going to take that $5,000 and basically give you a loan for $205,000. So you go from 4% for $200,000, and you're also probably paying a higher amount of interest depending on how long you've been into the loan, to a better loan at a lower interest rate, but they tack on those fees as part of what you owe on the house. So if you stay in a home for typically 5 years, then you easily pay off that amount of extra debt it cost you to refinance the house in the first place. So for me, if you have 4% or higher right now on your interest rate and you don't want to move, but you want to improve your situation, then if you can get 3%, I would do that all day long. And especially if you're at 4.5% or 5%, because there's some people who had a higher loan amount because they maybe had lower credit when they first bought the house. You might be able to save enough money and have enough equity in your home that also with the refinance, you're now getting rid of the private mortgage insurance, which can cost anywhere from $50 to $180 a month. So just doing a refinance can really make a huge difference on your bottom line every month. So before you consider purchasing a home, it's good to understand how the interest rates work for you. And before you do a refinance, make sure you think about that. Look at how much you owe. Think about how long you're going to live in that house and what your current interest rate is. If you guys have any questions, as always, please feel free to give me a call or send me an email. I'm always happy to help you with your specific situation. In-state or out-of-state, doesn't matter. I'm always happy to help. So thank you guys, everyone that's joined here tonight. Chuck, hi, how are you? He said, I may have asked before, but is it worth rating savings to some degree to eliminate PMI as interest rates continue to fall? I'm eager to land at the lowest interest rate imaginable and eliminate PMI. Yeah, Chuck, every situation is different. So let me say this to you. First off, for those of you that are tuned in that don't know what PMI is, it's private mortgage insurance. And it's something that after the crash of 2008, all of the lenders now require you to pay if you have less than 20% down, except for FHA. But let's just talk about a regular loan. So the moment you have a conventional loan and you've reached 20% value in your home, and it doesn't mean that you have to pay it down to 80%. It could just be the market going up and the value of your home going up. At that point, if you decide to refinance to get a lower rate, you can also maybe, with that appraisal, prove to the bank that you have at least 20% equity or ownership in the home, and then they'll get rid of the PMI, which can be a huge amount of savings. But to answer your question, Chuck, the one thing I would say I'd be concerned about that you have to look into is how much money are we talking about you taking out of your savings to make this happen? Because I think if you can take more money out of your savings, put enough down to get rid of the PMI, it's a good move. But it's not a good move if you drain this to the point where all of a sudden, let's say you have a roof repair or the car breaks or you guys have a dental thing or a health thing that you have no money to pay for those unexpected bills. So if you can take more out and feel good about what you still have saved, then yeah, absolutely. But that's kind of the question I think you need to ask yourself. Hopefully, Chuck, that made sense. Wally, hey Wally, what if you have a fixed interest rate? Well, most of the interest rates now are fixed at this point, so it just depends. Because if you, let's say, Wally, again, let's just use the 4.3. Right now, interest rates for a 30-year mortgage are under 3% or darn close to 3%. So if you're sitting at 4% or higher and you're going to stay in that home for another 5 years, if you refinance to that new rate of 3% you will be able to have that as a fixed rate as well. So you just want to make sure that the loan officer you use explains all of that to you. But you can save a lot of money. It's going to be fixed. It's just harder with, say, like an FHA, because with an FHA loan, they don't care. It's a government loan. They don't care if you have 20%. They're not going to remove the PMI. So let's say you have 20% home value in your house or equity in your home, and you don't want to refinance because you have at least 20% equity in your home right now. Then you contact your bank, you tell them, hey, I've got 20%. They'll send out an appraiser. It's going to cost you probably $500 to have an appraisal. And if the appraisal comes back and says, yes, you have 20% value in your home from what you owe on your loan, they'll remove the PMI. So it's going to cost you probably $800 by the time everything is said and done. But that's where someone like me comes in to help you, because as a real estate agent, I can sit down, pull comps, and say, yeah, I think you've got 20% value here, and here's why, before you go to the bank to ask for that, because they're going to charge you the $500. Whereas as a real estate agent, I do that service for you for free to give you a rough idea. And oh, good, Chuck, you did. That's great. Wonderful. And then Wally says, yes, can you refinance? Totally. Any kind of a loan you have, Wally, you can refinance to save money. But again, like I said, it's all about how much money are you going to save over the long term of the loan, and how much is it going to cost you to do the refi? Because sometimes it's cheaper to go right to your bank and say, hey, I want a better interest rate. Will you allow me to refinance and stay with you as my lender? And then maybe they'll cut some of their fees. Or you might be better off just going with a whole new loan officer and a new mortgage to get you to where you need to be. And then the other nice thing is a lot of them now will offer you different options. So let's say you are 10 years in on a 30-year mortgage, and now the rates have dropped enough where you can save some money. You could say to that lender, look, we want to refinance to a lower rate. We want to remove our PMI, but we want to stay at 20 years. You don't automatically have to go back to a 30-year loan. So you could do a 23-year loan, a 27-year loan, a 30-year loan if you want, or you could do a 20 or 15-year loan. And if you go to 15 years, then your rate drops probably another half a point. You can save even more money. But the problem with that is if that payment gets too high, it's really important that you don't go to a 15 years if you're worried about that payment. Because here's the other thing that's beautiful is if you refinance the house to a lower interest rate, so your monthly payment is lower, your interest, all of that stuff is lower. There's no one that says you can't add an extra $200 a month to a house payment, or one extra payment a year, which would be whatever it is, $1,100, $1,500, $1,800. You're going to save us a considerable amount of money on the back end because the loan will be over quicker. So you have a lot of options, but I always say be cautious. Take your interest rate, look at the number of years you're going to do it, and then make the decision what works best for you. Because for some people, if they're building a new business or they have a new job, the 30-year rate is better for them because the payments are lower, but you can always make additional principal payments to kind of chip away. So the rule of thumb with that in the past has been, if you add one extra payment a year, you will knock off 7 years on a 30-year mortgage, which is substantial. Because if you look at your amortization schedule, which is basically what the loan is, when you get a loan for a house, they'll give you what they call an amortization schedule, which is 30 pages, every single payment. And it breaks down your payments over the next 30 years. And it shows you how much is going to interest, how much is going to principal. On a 30-year mortgage, you will get to year 25 of a 30-year mortgage before half of that payment goes to interest and half of it goes to your principal or your debt. Up until year 25, the majority of the money that you're giving in your monthly payment is going to interest. So every $50, every $100, whatever you can do to pay a little extra towards your mortgage can make a really big difference. But having said that, there are some people who invest a lot that would argue and tell you that I'm being foolish for telling you this, because when your interest rates are only 3%, you're better off taking that extra money and instead of paying down your mortgage, maybe investing it in stocks or mutual funds or something like that. I was raised to have no debt. So it's been pounded into my head ever since I was a child to not owe anything and don't buy anything you can't afford and don't charge large sums of money. So I still have that innate feeling in me that, hey, man, I want to pay off my house so I own it free and clear because I'm always going to need a place to live. So I don't think either is better. It's more about what's your temperament and what are you comfortable with. So I hope that answers questions for you guys. Thank you. I appreciate that. The second thing that I wanted to discuss with you tonight, because this went a little bit longer, so I'll wrap it up and make it kind of quick, is I wanted to talk about how a contingency works, because there's a lot of confusion right now. And a contingency is nothing more in a contract than a promise to do something or something that has to happen to remove that contingency. So an example would be, we have a 10-day contingency inspection period, meaning that the buyer has 10 days to have their inspection, complete it, and get it done, because at the end of the 10 days, the contingency is removed. You have financing contingencies, you have homeowners association contingencies that you have a certain amount of time if you're buying a condo or a townhome to review all the documents, all that stuff. But the one I really wanted to talk about right now is a contingency to buy a house when it comes to just literally purchasing it. Meaning, let's say you have a home that you want to sell and it's not on the market yet. You find a home that you absolutely fall in love with. So you want to write an offer. Well, in that situation, you would have to write it as a contingent buyer. There would be a sheet of paper that's in the purchase agreement that says, you have X number of days or hours once we call this contingency to get your home sold. Meaning, I fall in love with this house, I write an offer, and they say, okay, we'll sign this contingent offer. But during the time that I'm trying to sell my home, the sellers can call that contingency anytime they want for any reason. It doesn't even have to be because there's another buyer that's interested. So let's say you sign this contingency, you put your house on the market, you're 4 days in. All of a sudden your agent gets a phone call from the listing agent of the house you want to purchase. And they say, this just isn't working out. We want to call that contingency and remove it. We want to just move on and try and find a different buyer. Now you have typically 48 to 72 hours to try to get your home sold to be able to move forward with the purchase of that house. If you don't get your home sold within the 72 hours, then that purchase agreement that you've written goes away. And those sellers are free and clear to sell to anyone that they want. So my argument, or my point I'm trying to make that I want you to consider is that if you fall in love with a house and you want to write a contingent offer on the sale of your property, knowing that it can be pulled out from under your feet at any time, are you better off just listing your home, getting it sold, and the minute you have a purchase agreement on the home you're selling, you can now go into that home you love as a non-contingent buyer. It's just subject to the successful closing of the sale of your home. It puts you in a much better position. Not only do you not get heartbroken if the contingency gets called and you lose that house, it also puts you in a better negotiating position that you can go in and say, look, we're non-contingent. We know we're closing on, say, September 30th. We want to buy your house. It puts you in a better position to get better terms, better price, better everything. Whereas the contingency, it's just like you're kind of sitting, hoping and praying. And I can promise you from doing this forever, for every home that sells, another one pops up in its place. So you also have to look at it, even though it's emotional and you fall in love with a place, you've got to look at it like, okay, if I found one, I can find another. And so my goal or obligation to you as a real estate agent, whether you're buying or selling, is to put you in the best possible position to be successful. That's really the long and short of it. And so before you jump in with both feet and you want to write a contingent offer on a property, you really want to have that conversation ahead of time to put you in the best position to win. That's the long and short of it. So that's pretty much everything that I wanted to say. Wally, thank you so much. I appreciate the kind words. Chuck, that as well. You guys, I really appreciate your being so kind and following me like this and tuning in even when you guys don't make a comment, you're just watching. So I'm going to open it up. I hadn't done this in the last couple of weeks. Does anyone have any questions that they want to ask about music or photography or sports or anything that we all share in common? I'm happy to have a little discussion. If not, I'll just call it a day and say thanks again for tuning in tonight. And also, too, if you know anyone that's buying or selling, please send them to me. I'm more than happy to take care of them. You can always visit my website, Tommy Sommers Real Estate, to see all the latest listings and get information about mortgages. I have people that I can refer you to that are mortgage people, and I have closers and anything you could possibly need. So view me as a resource. I'm happy to help. So, all right. That's about all I got to say. I don't see any other questions coming in. Guys, thank you so much for being so involved. Again, I appreciate it. I hope you have a great week. Thanks for tuning in for Monday Night Live. I'll see you again next week. Oh, and then don't forget on the 3rd, for those of you that are Three Sides fans, on the 3rd of September, I'm hosting that Kyle's auction on Thursday evening, the 3rd, and I'll have more information on my page. Have a great week, guys. Stay out of trouble. Talk soon.